This computer, please.
Emma, did you do something with your hair? You sure?
I mean, since last time I saw you, like, over a year ago, maybe. I don't know.
It has been a while, Merlo.
Not really.
Okay. Just making sure we not lying or anything, huh?
All right. In a minute here, I'm going to start screen sharing. Tonight, we thought we'd start out with a pretty, like, simple little PowerPoint, kind of going over, like, simple, what is an ELL student, and some of just the basics that might be kind of important. This is for any kind of major. It's definitely important for TESOL majors, but any other major, it's good to know these kind of things. So let me start screen sharing. All right, can you all see me fine? Perfect. Like I said, ELL students, who are they? So what is an ELL? Like, what does ELL mean? So that means English language learner. Hope you know that at that point. But I thought I'd also bring up some other terms. These are some terms that you might see in a classroom, you might see in the schools. Through time, they've been more accepted more then than they are now. So first off is limited English proficient. I'm gonna say about this one, we really don't like this term. It is a term that comes from a deficit mindset. When we look at our students, we don't want to think of what they can't do. We instead want to look at what they can do. So another term you might see is a CLD student. So this is a culturally and linguistically diverse student. This one's a good term, but it's a little specific. You also might see an ESL student, English as a second language student. This one is a little out of fashion just because English might not be their second language. It might be their third or their fourth language. So it's not entirely accurate. And this new term that's coming to fruition that we're trying to start a little bit more is emergent bilingual. This one has more of a growth mindset. It's pretty much the opposite to limited English proficient. Ugh, can't speak today. So you will probably see ELL a little more often, which is why I used it in this PowerPoint, but in the future, it's going to be probably more emergent bilingual. That's going to be the new terminology. So where do they come from? Where do these students come from? They come from everywhere. And these students are coming to you for not just one reason. They're all coming for their own different reasons. So some of them could be refugees. There's a lot of refugees in the Waterloo area. You might find them here. They could just be coming to the United States to seek like different opportunities. Their parents might be moving here because they have different businesses and it's time to move to the US for that business. And there could be a number of different reasons. There are always like 100 different reasons you could think of for why you might have an ELL student in the classroom. Emma.
They also, it was pointed out today in our practicum, which was a really good point. They might be US citizens. They might not be refugees or immigrants at all.
Yeah, excellent point. Sometimes they might just be US citizens, but like they have that other language because that's the language that's spoken at home. And again, I'm in the same practicum as Emma. So another thing to point out is like sometimes those students get labeled as ELL students because they don't speak English at home, but that doesn't mean that they don't necessarily know English. They could be like super good at English, but they're still going to be labeled as such because that's not their home language. So that's something that we always have to think about too with these kind of students. So, and then besides like why they're coming to the US or maybe the fact that they're already in the US, they also have different stories. They're very different people. So they may not be very well educated in their first language. So even though the English may be their second language, they might not even know a lot about their first language and they might have problems speaking that language, or maybe not speaking, but sometimes they don't know how to write or read in their own home language. So that's another obstacle that you have to overcome sometimes in the classroom because these students may not even know how to write in their home language. So how are they going to learn to read and write in English? Because they have no idea how to even do that in the first place. You have to start from base one there. Some of them may have never had a formal education at all. So some of them may be refugees and they've maybe never even been in the school system. So sometimes you have to start from the very beginning there, and like how to hold a pencil, how to tell time. Those are some of the things you might have to start with those students. Again, you don't want to look at them any lesser because of this. This is just where their starting point is. But that's something that you have to help them with. And then another thing is they might be even dealing with trauma. They might, again, be refugees. They could be fleeing their home country because of war. So they may have been coming from like a war-ridden countryside. They may have seen battle. They may have had that kind of trauma, and now they're in your classroom. And you have to figure out how to work with those students. So next, here's some statistics. I'll let Kerrigan take care of this.
I was just going to add something also with the last slide.
Yeah.
Just something to keep in mind, just because a student has, like, maybe they are, you know, in high school and they are like new to the United States, but they've been going to school, you know, their whole life in their home country. That does not necessarily mean that they're like, their experiences are probably not the same. So like what the perceptions that they have and like the experiences that they've had with education, you know, even if they've gone to school their whole lives, are likely a lot different, and they probably have different expectations, because school is different in pretty much every other country than it is here. So yeah, just something to keep in mind also.
Excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
I'll let you take care of this one too.
All right. So some statistics about just English language learners in general. In the state of Iowa, they represent about 6% of the student population. In Iowa, a lot of ELL students are found. Well, this is true all around the country. I'll save it for a little later because I just remembered that I typed it actually. And nationwide, ELLs represent about 10% of the student population. In the United States, a majority are Spanish speaking, but you know that will obviously continue to shift as you know different situations around the world change, and just depending on you know right now we are kind of in a big wave of Hispanic immigrants, but you know 20 years from now we might be in a big wave of immigrants from somewhere else. So then obviously language demands change with that. And so, yeah, like I was saying, around the United States, but especially in, you know, states like Iowa, a lot of ELL students are, you know, concentrated in those more like urban settings, but especially in states like Iowa, in rural areas, there are starting to be big increases, just because, you know, like farm labor, stuff like that. There are jobs that are readily accessible to those populations. And, you know, if your parents don't speak a ton of English, those are things that you can do and not really have that be an issue. So it is pretty realistic to say that no matter if you are teaching in small town Iowa or, you know, bigger city Iowa, it is likely that at some point in your career you will have a student that is ELL. So even if you think this isn't going to be super relevant to you, there is a good chance that at some point it will be. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Kerrigan. So next I thought we'd touch on how do I teach an ELL? Because wow, that's a big one to tackle. And basically it really just depends who your student is. Like I said before, and like we were saying, these ELL students are very unique, even though they all fall under this category of learning English and needing that kind of support. Their support is going to vary. They're going to need different kinds of supports in the classroom. Some of them might just need help, like I said, learning to even use a pencil. Some of them might need that kind of structured support. Some of them just need some extra visuals to help them out in the classroom. So I think what I was trying to say here is that there are different structures of classrooms and how you like help those ELL students. And I think I talk on the next slide what those are. But when you do move into a school district, they will already have like an idea of what their structure is for teaching ELL students. You're not going to come into the school and the administrators are not going to ask you to build this program from the ground up. They'll have something. You just have to figure out what that is. And that's very much dependent on whatever school you're in. So, and then some of these students are newcomers, like I said, and they are going to need lots and lots of help. So maybe they are proficient in their first language and they know how schools work. They'll just need a little help figuring out the American school system. But nonetheless, they're still newcomers and they might have absolutely zero experience with English. So you have to really help them. And then again, some are a lot more advanced and just need some extra support in the classroom. They might just need some extra visuals. They might just need a few extra explanations what things are to help them. But for the most part, they might be able to just stay in the mainstream classroom. It depends on who they are. You just have to figure out who your students are. And as you should be doing in any kind of classroom, you should figure out the individual characteristics of every one of your students, even if they are a white, cis, like middle grade, like student, average performing, they do football after school. You should know about those students anyway. So this is just another different kind of student you have to learn about. So then here's what I was talking about when I said with different kind of structures. Again, your school will already have this in place. You're not going to build this. So the first kind of structure I put on here was push in. This is going to be when there is a mainstream classroom, and then there is going to be an ELL teacher in that classroom helping the ELL student or students, depending on what the situation is. I think of this one as kind of like they could either be off the sidelines of just helping the student individually, almost like an IEP, but a little different. But it could also almost look like co-teaching. That teacher might also work with the mainstream teacher in the front of the classroom, helping them out. I've seen this personally during my level 2s. It's an interesting dynamic in the classroom. You might also have a pull-out instruction. So what happens then is these ELL students will be in the mainstream classroom, but then the ELL teacher will come, they'll grab them all, and they'll go have a different instruction with that ELL teacher, but they still will have some time in the mainstream classroom, so they're not completely separate from each other. I've also seen this during my level 2s. They've kind of had a mix of both push in and pull out. And then another one is, no talking, sheltered instruction. So that's when these students don't have really any interaction with mainstream students. They're kind of on their own, but they're also receiving that extra help. This would almost be kind of like a foreign language classroom in the sense that they're all together and like that or in that school system together without any extra like chance to speak English outside of the classroom, if that makes any sense. And then finally, I also thought I'd push in bilingual education. This one, it would be a very unique situation. I think there's a few schools here in Iowa that do it. It's basically when part of your day is taught in one language and part of the day is taught in another language, something like that, or maybe even in one lesson, there's 2 languages going on. So if you're in this kind of school, it starts really early. It'll start in like kindergarten that these students will be taught in 2 different languages. Most of the time that language is going to be English and Spanish. All right. So after this, I thought we would throw together some student profiles. These are some profiles that we made up. They're not real students, but they are students that you might have in your classroom. So the first person is Juan. He is from Mexico. He is in 5th grade and he has experience with formal education, so he does not need any help in that way. He is moving to the US because his parents are seeking better opportunities, and he has a higher intermediate level of English. He knows English pretty well. He's just in the classroom so he can have a little bit more help, but he does not need a whole lot of extra instruction. And that's one student that you might have in your classroom. Another student you might have is Anna. She is from China. She's in 10th grade and she has had formal education. Again, she doesn't need any help with that. She's moved to the US because she has family living here, but she has low intermediate proficiency. She may have had absolutely no education in English before, and this is probably her first time learning English is in the United States when she got to the school. So she'll need quite a bit of extra help, but she has a fairly good grasp of the language, and she can be in the classroom for some basic instruction. Here is Sanda. She is from Burma, and she is in 12th grade. She has been in the US for 10 years and is now accustomed to school, but she was not originally in the education system in Burma. She moved to the US as a refugee, and she is highly proficient in English. She has been here for a while. She knows her stuff, but she might still even be in the ELL program because it is hard to leave the ELL program once you're in it. The ELPA 21 is a very rigorous test that these students take every single year, and it determines whether they stay in the program or not. And there are a lot of cases where students, I think they have to score 4s in all 4 categories, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, to get out of the ELL program. You might have a student that scores 4 in 3 categories and 3 in another, basically proficient in English, and like they know enough to go into the mainstream classroom, but because they just had an off day maybe, they're still in the ELL program. That's a problem that we have to look for in the future, and it's something to keep in mind as a teacher. I also put in Zane. He is from the Republic of Congo. I thought I'd put this one in here because in the Waterloo area specifically, there are a lot of people from the Congo. He is in the 3rd grade. He has had very little experience in school. So he's going to need a lot of help when it comes to learning how to do school, essentially. So he might need help even learning how to raise his hand and when he needs to go to the bathroom or when we do different things. He's going to need help learning those things. He is in the US as a refugee, and he has beginning level proficiency. So not only does he have to learn how the school system works, he is also learning how the language works. It's important that you realize that you might have these kind of students in your class because they're going to struggle so much if they don't know what's going on at all, and there's no one there with the language to help them. So you have to give as much support to these students as you can without looking at them with a deficit mindset. Don't think of what they can't do. Realize that they need help with things and recognize that they can learn it. That's what's important with these students. And then finally, another student you might have in your classroom is Amira. She might be from Syria. She's in 10th grade. And she has some experience in school, but she had a disrupted education. That means she was in school, but at some point she got taken out. That could have been for a number of reasons. Syria, it's most likely it was due to the war. So while she was at school at first, she might have had 4 years in there where she wasn't in school at all. So she has a gap in there. So she knows the basics, but you're going to have to help her in some ways. And she has intermediate level proficiency. So she's doing pretty good, but she'll need some extra help in the classroom with language. And that was it for those profiles. Basically, the big thing I really wanted to get across here was ELL students are all unique. Just like any other student, your ELL students will have personal needs in the classroom. Just being aware of that is a great place to start. You may not know every little specific thing about how to help every single student, and you might not even have the capability. And in fact, it's probably unhealthy for us to keep worrying about all of these students all at once, because we're one person. We can't do all of that on our own. So the best thing is if you're not a TESOL major and you're not in a school with TESOL, seek help from your ELL teacher. They'll help you. They would love to help you. They hate it when everyone just kind of works without them. So ask them for help. Ask them what they should do. But also take things into your own hands. Kind of research it a bit. Be aware of who your students are and realize that you can help them in some ways, but don't take it all on at once. And that's all I had for this little PowerPoint. I will stop sharing. And did any of the exec members have anything to add to that?
One thing that I was gonna throw in also, so I did my level 2s at an elementary school in Waterloo. And one thing, especially with some of the little kid ELLs, even just the ideas about how you go about making friends and things like that, in the United States are totally different than they are other places. So my mentor teacher that I was with was oh yeah, sometimes you just have to play friendship doctor. You just have to find someone that will be friends with them so they know what it's like to connect with other students and how they go about that, just because norms of social interaction are also different in other places. So yeah, sometimes you just kind of have to help them do things like make friends and just things that you might think are super basic.
Another thing I would like to even add to that about just social skills is if you guys have taken meds, you may have seen like a rating scale of rating students for how well they perform on like politeness and how well they deal with that. Always be aware that students may come from a culture, even if they speak the language perfectly, you have to be aware of the culture they come from, because politeness can look different to different students. So sometimes a student just won't even look you in the eye, and that's because from their culture, that's rude. So like, always have those kind of things in mind. It's really important to think of those things. Thank you for bringing that up, Kerrigan. Anything else? Okay, then I will open the floor to any questions that anyone might have. And if you want to put in the chat, Marlone, you can go first.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm being harassed by this student over here. I'm in TESOL Club. You want to join? Sorry, I'm trying to recruit for you. Okay.
Thank you, Marlone.
First comment is actually I'm an ESL too. I'm an English second learner. Low key, as you going through that, I'm like, you know what? That was actually me. So actually, yeah, I was in an ELL classroom, and I was a push out. And so low key, you guys just triggered a bunch of memories right now. And the thing was, I was in it for like 3 years. So I was lucky because I was smart enough to start reading and everything. So I got out fairly quickly. And another thing, I really like the comment about playing friend doctor. That was really cool because I didn't think about it, but that is something some of my teachers did. Is like, you like cars? He likes cars? Let's play cars. And like, okay, cool. So that, like the little things we don't think about, most people do. Like I remember it was just me and my brother just playing in the dirt with ants and nobody else around us. And for the longest time, that was just us in this little ant colony that we terrorized for the majority of the school year until we introduced other people who like cars, apparently. So, good presentation, y'all.
Thank you for adding that, Marlone. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? If you don't want to speak, feel free to put anything in the chat. I don't like to put pressure on people.
I mean, I was just going to mention something about like how an emergent bilingual classroom might look. So there is a school system in Waterloo where they do have kind of a sheltered approach to teaching English, where they have the English language learners put into a separate area away from mainstream classes. So even if you don't see, like if you don't have one in your class, they're still there, but your school system might have that specific area where they keep them in, which in my humble opinion, I don't like that. I'm very vocal about that, but that might be something that you see. So even if you don't see them, just keep in mind that they are probably there and your school system has that in place.
Yeah, and even if you don't see them, they're there. And also, I remember reading something for one class. I'm sorry I can't bring up the source on this. It's there, but it was someone who had been an ELL student. They had grown up and they were writing this article, but they had said that they were embarrassed to be an ELL student. Like they would hide in the bathroom and then dive into the ELL classroom because they just didn't want people to know that they needed that. So it also might help to let them know that it's okay, and maybe even talk to other students about it that aren't ELL students. Like, hey, they're not stupid or anything. They just need a little help with English. In fact, they're probably going to be way better at English than you guys. Because gosh, grammar kills me.
That was definitely in our practicum reading for this week. As soon as you said it, I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So if anybody really wants the information, I got her right here.
Kerrigan, you're so like prepared.
It was right behind me and you like started saying it and I was like, I've read this too. Where did I read this?
It's awesome that you guys like did the reading for that. Way to go.
Well, it was written at like a non-academies level, so.
Yeah, I haven't even opened it, but you know, We haven't talked about it yet, so I will.
Emma, you're my spirit animal right now.
What did you say, Marlon?
That is so relatable. This week is the first time I opened a book for any of my practicum classes.
I feel
Stays between us, y'all. Stays between us.
well, unfortunately, this is getting uploaded, but want me to like blur your name and face for that little comment?
It's okay. They will know.
They'll look at it in like 2 years when they're like, "Ah, this is some great resources," and be like, "Wait a minute." Alrighty, if no one else has anything to add or any questions, I don't really have anything else. I know this was really short, but I really don't have anything much else to say regarding this information, at least. Anyone?
Actually, I have a quick question about it. So I'm thinking about changing my minor to TESOL, but would this be something that would be like more for a minor or for doing like a second major?
It can actually really help to have it as a minor. Don't feel pressured to be a TESOL or like ELL teacher after you graduate, because there is such a demand for ELL teachers that if like, a school district sees that you have a minor in TESOL, they might be like, you could be our TESOL or like ELL teacher, like right now. Don't let them bully you into doing that, because you could be super unprepared, because we have a lot of like practicum and experience and stuff doing this, and it can be a lot to learn. But it can be super helpful in the mainstream classroom. What's your major, if you don't mind me asking?
It's LED.
LED, okay. So just even being in the classroom and knowing that these students will be there, like I said, like they're gonna be in your classroom more than likely, unless, like Haley pointed out, they're in a sheltered instruction. They're gonna be in your classroom, and it can be super helpful just to know even like a smidgen of how to help them, or these like different methods of teaching them. But again, don't ever feel pressured to be like an ELL teacher after that.
Okay.
Especially with like I feel like in elementary schools, it's a lot more common for like ELL students to be in the mainstream classroom and then do like more of a push in or a pull out. Sheltered instruction is a lot more common in like high school. Not that like the other things don't not that they don't switch every once in a while. But yeah, I would say like having a minor, it's just good then, because you do have that knowledge that could be really useful.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Also, we're just fun people over here, so.
We're super great. Alrighty, anyone else have another question or anything to add?
I have an update with Anthropology Club.
Perfect.
They're willing to do the Kahoot thing. Just give me a date and a time and I'll let them know.
Alrighty, I emailed my mentor teacher and she hasn't gotten back to me. So I think Mackenzie may have said that she had another teacher that she was thinking about like bringing in as a guest speaker. I would love to have our next meeting be like about like co-teaching and like working with an EL teacher in the classroom. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure out a date and stuff for that. So those are two things to look forward to. It's co-teaching in the classroom and a Kahoot date with Anthropology Club. All right, if that is everything, I'll do one final check for like the 4th time. I will stop the recording and end the meeting.
I just had a quick question. If we were meeting next, like every week, because last year was like bi-weekly.
We're doing the same thing this year. It's bi-weekly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Unless we have any kind of like event that we can do, but I'm so hesitant to do any kind of like in-person event with coronavirus. I don't ever want to be responsible for someone getting coronavirus.
Like us on social media and we'll keep you up to date.
Yeah.
Hey, can we do an online bake sale?
we could try. Do you just want Emma's goods? Is that what you're getting?
Yes. You know those cookies I made the one time?
Oh yeah, they're good.
Yeah, I'm not, no. I'm not handing out baked goods during a pandemic. It's not happening.
We'll clean them, I promise.
I'm
I'll taste test them. Scout's honor.
Alrighty. Anything else? Alrighty, I will stop the recording.